With a median age of 39 years old and having 35% of our clients over the age of 65, you can imagine that we have a lot of people that are basically kicking off their fitness journey at any age. So many times in a consult, I have people doing what I call the throwing up of hands. If you're watching me on social media, you see what I'm doing there, throw my hands up. Now, wait a second. They say, I'm not interested in being Superman. I haven't worked out before. This is new to me. And I call it throwing up the hands because they're worried that starting at this juncture, this point in their life, that it's going to be a challenge. And we tell everybody, hey, start where you are. Anybody can do this. Well, today's podcast, we're going to talk to somebody doing exactly that, but living his level of wellness. A conversation with Mark Still on a unique challenge today on the Personal Edge Fitness Podcast.
Welcome to the Personal Edge Fitness Podcast
with Garrett Williamson.
Health, wellness, exercise, nutrition, and a whole lot more. Got questions? Call us and leave a message at 251-278-EDGE or message us at Personal Edge Fitness on Facebook and Instagram, at Team PE on Twitter, or personaledgefitness.com.
Good day and welcome to the Personal Edge Fitness Podcast. My name is Garrett Williamson, president of Personal Edge Fitness. Thank you so much for joining us today. Been looking forward to doing this podcast, looking forward to talking to an old friend of mine. So before we get into that, let me tell you how to get in touch with the show if you have any questions about this show, or if you have any questions concerning anything that deals with dispelling the myths of health, fitness, and wellness. You can reach me at area code 251-278-3343. That's area code 251-278-EDGE. You can also reach me on my email address, which is Garrett, Garrett at personaledgefitness.com. Now, of course, that's our website and also our Facebook page. Hit me up on Twitter at TPE if you're so inclined. As I said in the intro, with our median age being 39 and 35% of our clientele over the age of 65, we've got a lot of people that are getting back to fitness, and we've got a lot of people that are starting it for the first time. And you've heard me talk about this time and time again, and talk about the live age, talk about the fact that you can start at any age, and you can regain your strength. It has nothing to do with the number on the calendar. It has to do strictly with 4 different things: fitness, nutrition, lifestyle, and the most important is mindset. And I've got somebody on the phone right now that has taken this challenge on, and he's definitely conquered the most important one. I want to welcome to the show my good friend, now living in Erie, Colorado, Mark Still. Mark, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Garrett. I'm glad to be here.
I miss seeing you, and I'm going to tell everybody a little bit about our history. So you're former Mobilian, correct?
Born and mostly raised there.
Exactly. And you've had a few different careers, and one of them that you had was a bike shop. And I'll never forget you telling the story about it. You told me that you always wanted to own a bike shop. Opened up all about bikes in Mobile, and the best bike that he ever sold. Don't worry, Mark, I'll take care of those conversations. I know this is what you'd say anyway. Was a 2008 red and white Orbea Aura, because he did it. He sold that bike. He was so proud because he sold it to his absolute favorite athlete. Now I'm gonna make a lot of people mad when I say that, but it was actually mine. It was one that I raced. Actually, I raced it in my last national championships. So obviously, Mark has got something going on, or had something going on in his past about biking. But we're talking to him about a really unique challenge. So tell us what you got going on, man. This is kind of interesting. Give me your history and tell everybody what you and I've been talking about.
Well, the history for cycling goes way back, last 20 years. I guess around 2000 it started, and it started with sprint triathlons.
Right.
And just kind of grew from there. And I like the bike better than running and swimming. A lot of people remember that my thing is running and swimming are race day activities. There's no sense wearing yourself out too early with that stuff. And it just grew. And then one day, like you said, the idea came to open a bike shop, and then maybe that was a good idea. Maybe it wasn't. I made a lot of great friends like you.
Yeah.
And I still talk to a lot of those folks, and we still think about those times fondly. But around the time the shop closed and when we moved to North Alabama, the riding started to tail off a little bit. And, 5 years ago, I was still riding, but between then and a couple of years ago, I kind of quit. And it's kind of odd because I moved to the U.S. Mecca for cycling in Boulder, Colorado, and stopped riding. And this challenge thing is just, something's got to change because, gain the weight, which all bodies should be riding bikes. It doesn't matter if you gained a little weight, but, other health issues kick in and something needed to change. So I just decided to try and set a big, audacious goal like I'd done in the past. And that's how I first did an Ironman, was just, I think I can do that.
Right.
So I picked Unbound Gravel 200, kind of the preeminent gravel race in the U.S. Decided to make it public for a lot of reasons, a little accountability, a little bit of trying to pull some other folks along, and that's where we are. So I only had 3 months when we announced such a thing, I haven't ridden 200 miles in the last 2 or 3 years. So I've got to figure out how to do it all in one day.
Well, I like the way you do it so nonchalantly. You're talking about this challenge because there's really more to it than that. You've been
Are
out
you sure?
of. See what I mean, everybody, about mindset? I'm telling you, this guy he's centered. He's really centered, you know. And there's probably friends of his that would beg to differ, but I'm telling you, he's centered at least on this idea, that's for sure. But you haven't been riding for a while. And as you told me, I love the way you said this. Fat and lazy and just not where you want to were, that's for sure, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Do you mind sharing your age?
I am 55 years old.
Love it.
And a half. I'm going to go back to when I was a little kid. I was 55 and a half.
All right, for all my listeners, I promise you, I did not tell him to say that. I promise you. I'm sitting here. If you're watching me on social media, you just saw me celebrate when he said that because you know one of the things I say about when people talk about their age, you ask a 4-year-old a month after his birthday and you ask him how old he is, he's going to tell you, I'm 4 and a half. And we stopped doing that because we're not proud of living these years and having this experience and what have you. I'm telling you, this guy's got the right mindset. You're exactly right. 55 and a half. And I'll let you know something, buddy. You're a half and 1 day older than me. So I'm right there with you, buddy.
Well, you know,
That's
my
awesome.
dad always said that age was cyclical. So the way to find out your true age is to add the numbers together. So in my dad's parlance, I'd be 11, excuse me. 5 plus 10. I'd be 10.
10. Okay. Well, actually, with the challenge.
We behave that way, right? We behave. I behave like a 10-year-old.
Of course, I applaud your efforts. The whole reason I'm having you on the show. But the race that you have picked to get in shape for you, I would say, yeah, a 10-year-old would probably pick that. So, man, you're right on.
Outplayed in the dirt.
Exactly, outplaying in the dirt. Exactly. So, why such a big challenge, man? I mean, I've got people come in. Hey, look, I've gained 20 pounds. I want to drop 20 pounds. That's a monster challenge right there for a lot of people. But you're taking it a step further. Why so big, pal?
Well, I guess I don't reset well. You know, I think that's if I had never stopped riding, that was always an event I loved the idea of.
Right.
And, you know, all the road bike riding we did up in North Alabama, we would always wander off onto dirt and gravel roads. And I don't know, I've already done a couple Ironman. It seemed like a next good step.
Well, when was your last Ironman?
Oh, 08.
Oh, 08. Okay. This is 2023. So that's been a day or two.
I can do math, sort of. I couldn't add 5 and 5 together a minute ago, but I can do math.
That's okay. I understand. Well, my 08 Orbea, which I just retired, was brand spanking new the last time you did an Ironman. And
That's correct.
and I'm driving that home because that's what I think is so awesome about this. The way you looked at this, you looked at it just like you looked at it years ago. Okay, well, what race would I do? And most people at this point would go, okay, look, if I go out and finish a 5K, I may just go walking. I'll be proud of myself. No, you go for the whole enchilada. Tell me about this race.
Well, the race is one of the first organized gravel races. It's in Kansas. It's on Flint gravel roads, so it's rough on tires. There's all sorts of things besides the distance that can get to you. It's a little bit hilly. People think Kansas is flat. It's definitely not flat. So there's an equipment challenge. There's certainly a distance challenge. It's hard to get into the event. Another reason to choose it and make it public was you usually have to get in by lottery. But, when somebody's willing to put themselves out there and gets a few different companies involved in supporting them, then the event makes room for you. So that was part of it too.
Yeah.
And I still like bikes. I still like the technical part of bikes, and they've changed a lot in the last 5 years. So
Right.
the last road bike I had was from 2015 or 16. The technology's different. And
Right.
there's going to be, 18 or 20 hours for me to fiddle around with bike stuff while I'm trying to ride all 200 miles and make the cutoff.
Yeah, I bet so. Tell me about that road now. This seems like it's going to make the cobblestones in the race in Paris.
Roubaix.
Yeah, Paris-Roubaix. It looked like nothing. I mean, tell me about these roads.
That's a different thing. So gravel cycling has just become the thing. It's a lot like triathlon was in the early 2000s, where that's where the fun is
Right.
in gravel right now. A lot
Right.
less serious. That's starting to change, a lot like triathlon did.
Right.
But gravel racing's just gotten big. I mean, there's just hundreds of gravel races all over the country now and all over the world.
Right.
And I think a lot of people are gravitated to that because you're not riding in traffic most of the time. It's not as, razor's edge as downhill mountain biking and there's gravel roads everywhere. If you want to be a mountain biker, there's not great mountain biking everywhere, but there's fun gravel roads all over the country. So
Right.
people, friends in Mobile and Baldwin County are all out riding gravel. That's just the thing now. So I like road cycling. It's different out here. road cycling out in Colorado is a kind of a distant thing. You see distant mountains, you see distant roads. The streets and the roads are different. There's big shoulders and lots of speed, and that just didn't appeal to me when I got it. And I think that's part of what got me to stop riding as much.
Right.
So gravel is just kind of the popular thing right now. There's a lot of opportunity and new gear in it, and it's where the vibe is. It's where the fun is. And if you're going to do something like this and not quite take it all so seriously, for me, it's not mountain biking, it's not road biking, it's going to be gravel.
There's a lot of people that have, as Gary Zakutny, by the way, he told me to tell you hello, said that he finally drank the Kool-Aid and got a gravel bike and does a lot of riding there. I've not gotten into gravel myself, and I think
it's for sure a Kool-Aid event. That's a good way to describe it. It's absolutely a Kool-Aid. Because like I said, I rode my road bike in whatever. I didn't care what the road looked like or even if there was a road there.
Right.
But the rocks are too big, the ruts are too heavy, whatever. You need bigger tires and more clearance and all that stuff. But it's definitely a drinking kind of activity these days.
Yeah, I bet. So that makes sense. It seems like an awesome hybrid between the two. A gravel bike is not a bad idea in our locale with some of our roads, that's for sure. But that's what it seems like to me. It seems like a kind of a crossover. I mean, am I right about that?
It is. And if anybody was a mountain biker in the 80s, gravel's a lot like mountain bike was in the 80s. There's some of the bikes are starting to get some suspension, but generally, there's no suspension. The tires aren't as wide.
Right.
Just fun. You go wherever you want. And there's some bikes that are gotten very specific to gravel, but generally they're a lot like road bikes. The geometry is a touch different. The clearance for tires is a lot wider.
Right.
But you could certainly go back and forth on it. It's a much more versatile bike than a pure road bike for sure.
I can understand the allure for that also, but you're taking on this challenge. You're 55 and a half, admittedly, out of shape. You've got a major challenge here as far as getting in shape and what have you. You've got media on this. I mean, and I want to make sure you cover and let everybody know how to follow you on this, but also answering, why did you make this public?
Well, part of it's for me. Part of it's some accountability. When you slide so far,
right.
It helps to have a little bit of somebody looking over your shoulder. I also never really found my group of people to ride out here with, which I think is another reason why I quit riding. So I don't have that. There's nobody waiting on me over at Carpe Diem at 5 o'clock in the morning to go ride like they do.
Right.
But I think the other big reason is if I'm going to go through this, somebody probably would get inspired by that.
Absolutely.
I haven't done anything in quite a number of years from a physical activity standpoint.
Sure.
I pick a big challenge. I think watching me try and do this and stumble along the way, as I surely will, that should be motivating for some folks. And maybe that gets somebody back on the bike or get somebody out for a run, or even if they've never done it, maybe it's the thing that gets them on a hybrid bike riding around the neighborhood. And I don't really care what kind of bike it is. Riding a bike is a glorious thing, and everybody should try it.
And do it like you told me earlier. I mean, everybody should be on a bike. I can't agree with you more. I think that's fantastic.
I think so. Life's better when you're pedaling a bike. The neighborhoods look different. If you could have driven around town, and I did that. I grew up in Mobile.
Right.
I didn't start riding bikes until 2000, a couple of years after I'd moved to Huntsville the first time, or near Huntsville.
Right. Okay.
And I came back to Huntsville as a cyclist and couldn't believe how different the town looked from a bike rather than a car.
Oh, wow.
So yeah. I think it's a chance to experience a world maybe you're familiar with in a completely different way. Things look different and behave different when you're riding around on a bike.
I can't agree with you more, and I'm going to take you back down memory lane a little bit. The closest thing we've got to those things, I think they're real high. They're like hills. I think they're called mountains that y'all got out there. We have Mount Cochran Bridge, which I know you're very familiar with, and the Edge Ride.
The Alp de Cochran. I've ridden up to that a lot.
Yeah. I'm sure you have. I'm going off of what you said a minute ago about everything looks different on a bike. On my first date with my wife, one of the things I did was she wasn't from Mobile. She's not from Mobile. She'd spent, went to South Alabama, spent a lot of time here. But she had never gone over the Cochran Bridge, and I took her over the Cochran Bridge at night. It's glorious. And for those of you who don't know, you're going over the Port of Mobile, and you look down all the lights and the big ships that are coming in. It's really a glorious view. Completely different on a bike, especially when you're at the top of it, where we would actually catch our breath, and you think it's not only a beautiful sight, but of course getting that rest wasn't a bad idea either. So
yeah.
You also struck something that we drive home here at Personal Edge. I'm going to get to the second part of this, of why you're doing this and making this public, and that is the accountability of it. And you said two things there. Not only the fact that if I throw it out there, I've got some accountability. I got to show up. I got to get out there. But you also talked about when you were here, you had somebody waiting on you at Carpe Diem. The ride takes off at 7 o'clock, not 7:05, and you got to be there and ready to go. That's what we do with our personal training clients. I always told people the number one thing we sell is accountability. But something else that really speaks to your character, and that is that if they see me doing this, everybody sees me doing this, then I might inspire somebody else. And I think that's fantastic. And the reason I say it speaks to your character, I can remember riding, I can tell you exactly where we were. We were on Old Shell Road, and we're doing a morning ride. We're heading out, and we're right in front of what used to be the old Am South Bank building. It's closed now, but you know what I'm talking about, the White House, right-hand side, just right close to Springfield College. Yep. You were towards the front, and you dropped back to encourage a few riders along the way. There were new riders. Some of them were riding. Somebody was on a TT bike, was in TT bars, and you were riding up and you were coaching them. So, and this is exactly what you're doing with this event too. And you're putting your body through a lot to go through this. I applaud you for taking on that challenge for that reason.
Well, that's sharing. That's part of bikes. Everything you do, you should try and share it, I think.
Right.
And, those days were fun. Those days, group rides were great, and new people coming into cycling was always fun, and it was always good to help encourage people. Of course, now I'm on the other end of that. And,
right.
I need encouragement for myself, but
right.
Thanks for saying that. Bikes are just fun, and picking a big event and making it public, if that helps anybody, then that's great. That's part of it. And that selfishly, that's motivating for me.
Right.
It's not wholly selfless. That's part of what I enjoy about whatever I'm doing, is sharing it and bringing other folks along that are interested.
Exactly. Okay, I got a question for you, though, and I'm sure that you've had some interesting reactions from friends, family, whatever, about you doing this. Have you?
I've talked to people that I haven't talked to in a long, long time because of this. So
really?
If nothing else happens, that's been a beautiful thing.
What kind of reactions are you getting from people about doing this?
Well, it's funny. If you've known me back into those days, back in the early 2000s, then generally your reaction has words in it like pig-headed and stubborn. You'll figure it out. People that don't know me, that I work with now, or I've met in 5 or 6 or 7 years, they'll say things like, "What's your training plan? Who's your coach?"
Right.
They don't know me very well, because if they did, they'd know I don't have training plans, and I've never talked to coaches.
Right.
So it's been funny, that reaction. And then all of the folks a lot of them from Mobile that used to shop at the store or ride on those rides, they've all reached out and
awesome.
Had words of encouragement. So they've seen me do pig-headed things before, and it worked out okay. So
well, I
think that's a good
go ahead.
point. It's okay with me if it doesn't. I mean, there really is no failure in this, and I think that's part of the right attitude. Is if I get to if I don't make it to the start line for some reason,
right?
If it's a legit, it's okay. I made some progress, and if I get in the event and can't finish 200 miles, that's okay. There's great progress that's been made in between there. And if I do roll across the finish line, it's actually going to be 204 miles, I think.
Right.
Well, then that's great too. But that's not the end of it. The whole point is to get back to a lifestyle that's more oriented around fitness and function.
Sure.
And so really already, as little as I've ridden so far,
right,
it's already been successful in my mind, so I can't do anything but go up from here.
Awesome. I love your attitude. I'm driving this home. My listeners know that I'm driving this home, and that is that listen to this mindset. I've set a goal, and the journey, no matter where you end up landing in the journey, it's great. You get to win. But I love that approach about it. Let me ask you this. Now, you've been married for 32 years, is that right?
Correct.
And I know your kids are grown, but what's your wife think about this?
I think she's glad there's some activity going, because she's watched the decline in what I used to enjoy cycling. It was such a huge part of my life.
Right.
So she's excited about that. She's remarkably supportive. She always has been. She will always give me the right advice. If she thinks something's incorrect or I'm on the wrong path, she'll certainly tell me.
Sure.
But if it's not the wrong path, she's always been supportive, and I suppose always will.
Right.
And that's part of what makes these things possible. I mean, the person I live with every day believes in me more than anybody does these days. And that's my good fortune. I had parents just amazing parents that were always, my dad believed I could do anything. My mother believes I can do anything. My wife believes I can. I just need to go do some stuff.
Right. Too true. Well, and I don't think anybody has to ask you why you've been married for 32 years, happily married for 32 years. I mean, that's a huge part about it, having that team around you, having that support around you. We talk about that with the clients when we're working with them about, hey, you're making some changes. How does your family feel about this? What are your friends? What are the reactions and what have you? Because that means so much. It's just that you've added so much to your family by making this public, which I think is incredible. Let everybody know, how can they follow you? I mean, this is going to be, we're going to have you back on the show. If you don't mind, I want to kind of follow you along in this progress. But tell us how we can kind of keep up with your adventures here.
Well, you can follow the writing part on Strava, so any sort of activity will show up there. And if you're curious as to how much physical activity I've done in the last few years, you can go certainly look in Strava. So,
okay,
yeah, Mark's still on Strava. The end of the little vanity URL is uphill still.
Okay,
and then a lot of video is being posted on slowguyonthefastride.com. So my side projects, or one of the businesses I'm working in, is that business, Slow Guy on the Fast Ride. So we do content around cycling. We also have content around whiskey and those kind of things. So balance is important.
Absolutely.
I don't do a lot on Instagram, but I will as I get closer. So Uphill Still on Instagram would be another good place to watch.
Okay, Uphill Still. And Slow Guy, I love that. Slow Guy on the Fast Ride. Am I right about that?
That's my friend Dan Cavallari. Dan was a longtime tech editor at Velo News, and we met before he was at Velo News. We worked at the same company, and we started the Whiskey podcast together. And then as he was working on podcasts for cycling and video, I started helping him with editing, and we just got to where it's a little business in the evenings together.
Sure.
And he's an excellent writer, and is the one that's really helped me enlist some companies for some support. So Slow Guy on the Fast Rides, where you can find all of that plus a bunch of other stuff about cycling. If you like road cycling, it's a heck of a thing to watch. Awesome.
We did pass that on, but I got to pass this on too, because we're all about balance here. And you went right into one of my favorite topics, and that is, what I call the live food. And that is, this idea of hating food is kind of ridiculous. And I love this balance. Cycling and whiskey. I can't find another happier marriage than that. I mean, that's awesome.
Well, there's a third component, Garrett. So
okay.
Cycling, whiskey, and coffee.
Oh, of course.
Yes.
But that's sort of like cycling, whiskey, and breathing. I mean, I pretty well knew the coffee was in there. Exactly. That makes perfect sense. The Whiskey Podcast, what is that? Tell me the name of that.
That's called The Practical Still, and that started because whiskey is one of these hobbies, kind of like gravel cycling, as a matter of fact, that's just gotten out of control. There are people that 3 weeks ago were drinking Jack and Coke, and all of a sudden now they're trying to buy $800 whiskey.
Right.
And that seems silly to me. It wasn't very practical. There's really tasty whiskey we can drink any day of the week, and we don't have to stand in lines or hunt or pay ridiculous prices. That was the genesis of that.
Right.
And I'd always do a podcast. So I tried to talk Dan into it, because Dan hosts a bunch of podcasts and is a professional journalist. And after a while of begging him, he finally agreed. And that's how The Practical Still started. So we don't do a lot of podcasts these days, but the YouTube channel is extremely active. So there's
awesome
videos on different bottles of whiskey that I like. And we do our Friday live streams every Friday at 2:30 Mountain Time. Dan and I are on YouTube sipping whiskey.
Perfect.
Talking about it, how to get it and not go broke doing it.
That sounds great. The heart you have for the community, I mean, is amazing. If it's not cycling, and hey, y'all watch me on this journey because you can do it too, it's whiskey. I mean, I'm telling you, that's wonderful, man. You're a giving individual, Mark. I'm saying that tongue in cheek, of course, but I do mean it.
That's nice. That's nice of you, but I am drinking the whiskey. So.
No matter what, exactly. And I'm still at work, and actually, I shouldn't say that, but I should say that I am at work, but and I don't have any with me at the moment, so you're one up on me there, Hoss. That's for sure. So should have thought about that before I started recording this.
Certainly moderation. If you need to learn any lessons in moderation, a whiskey hobby is a good place to learn some lessons in moderation.
Yeah, I'm sure of that, and I heavily encourage that. And I'm not so sure that you're doing the moderation as far as the cycling, doing the unbound gravel of 200. But hey, again, you're working out the balance. You're moderating over here, maybe not so much over here, which I applaud you for, which I think is tremendous. I really do. So.
Yeah, thanks. And I think another good point around something like unbound and 200 is there are people, and there are people in town there in Mobile that spend a lot of time training for these things and really planning their life around it and making them big events,
Yeah.
and their expectations are certainly different than mine. So I don't want anybody to think that I expect to show up in Kansas with won't be much more than 1,000 miles in my legs in the last year
Right.
and have a one time. I'm certainly going there to just see if I can cross the finish line.
Right.
And my attitude is much more around the fun I'm going to have doing it and who I'm going to do it with than it is any sort of time. So I don't want anybody to think that I have some sort of illusion or
Sure.
that it's actually possible to go from 0 to a fine finishing time in 3 months. That's probably unrealistic, but that's not my goal. My goal is to cross the finish line and have a good time and bring
Right.
some folks along. It's just a little different. I've heard from a few people, in fact, a few people that from, or at least one person from Mobile, I guess we shouldn't use names to call them out, but
Yeah.
the Unbounded Bell, which is 350 miles.
Oh, wow.
So, really my whole, and I hate to call it training, but my whole process of getting ready
Right.
is I'm really shooting at 120 miles. If I
Okay.
can do 120 miles here at altitude in the steep hills and the crazy wind
Sure.
in Colorado by the end of May, then I'm just going to have to tough out the last 80 miles
I got you.
there and
Yeah.
realistically, I'm not really going to be perfectly fit to do 200 miles by then.
Understand.
It's more of a what can we patch together in time to get there, and if we can pair that with the right attitude, then we're going
Right.
to have a good time.
I appreciate you pointing that out. I think you'd agree. That'd be an insult to a lot of the cyclists here. The one like you told us
Yes.
doing Unbound 350 say, well, I'm going to do this in 3 months and I'm going to be on the podium. No, and I appreciate you pointing that out because that would be kind of somewhat of an insult. This is a victory in itself. Like you say, if you don't make it to the finish line, you're going to be farther away than you were. And having that attitude is what's going to carry you there. I agree with what you're talking about, training at altitude and getting up to the 120 miles and trying to gut out the last 80. That makes perfect sense. We hope that we're going to be adding, wind beneath your wings or power to your wheels to help you gut out that last 80. But I love your sense of victory here. I love your definition of a win here. I was speaking to a former collegiate athlete. I'm not going to call anybody out. He was phenomenal. He was known for what he did and what have you, and he was getting involved in a lot of cycling, and he was a swimmer. And I said, man, you ought to go for the amateur and do USAT and go to nationals and stuff like this because I know you like to race and whatever. Oh, well, if I can't be the first on the podium, I'm not going to do it. And I thought, to each his own. I understand. That
Sure.
may be his level of
Yeah.
wellness. That makes sense. But this is music to my ears. The way you're approaching this and the way you're kind of taking the pressure off yourself as far as building up stress in your head that you don't need to have about, I've got to be on the podium, this kind of thing. No, I'm going to go out. I'm going to give it my best shot. I want to bring y'all along, and I hope I get there. That's what I'm saying about your definition of a win. I think it's tremendous, and I wish more people would take it on.
I certainly do not want to not finish.
Right.
I've never not finished one of these things. I've not finished a crit once. Maybe twice. But other than that, I did the Ironman and finished them. I've done a couple of half Ironman. We've done all the century rides. So
Right.
I don't want to also sound like I don't care if I finish it. And this is one of my wife's concerns is she understands that. So
Right.
generally I'm going to finish or be completely unable to finish. And so she's a little worried about that. So I don't want it to sound like I don't care if I finish. I certainly do. And I certainly have never not finished these things. And I have every intention to finish it.
I understand.
That happens.
I understand.
Everybody, I gave it all I had and
Right.
pedaled until I finished.
I don't think that's coming across. You make it very clear. I had to take a second to see what you were trying to explain there, but it makes sense. I understand that. But my friend, I think that's between your ears. I really do.
100%, yeah.
As far as, worried about people thinking you're not going to want to try to finish. No, I think you're attacking this thing. You're going after it. You're going to give it your best. But you're taking the pressure off yourself that I know I'm going to go out there and give my best. No matter what, I'm going to go give my best. And if I don't finish and I give my best, hey, I'm good with that. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I feel that's where you are on this.
Yeah, that's the fun part. And I want to have a good time. I always tell people I have more fun on a bike than anybody. And that's
Right.
if I'm fit or not. I'm still usually having more fun than most folks. And there's another little wrinkle to this, and that my cousin's coming out to do this with me. And
Awesome.
We've never ridden together.
Oh, man.
So we have history where I have a hobby. He's younger than I am. So I'll have a hobby and he'll pick it up, and I'll be sure he'll never be able to do this hobby. The first one was tennis.
Right.
Going to college on a tennis scholarship.
Oh, gosh.
And the next one was guitars. I tried to teach him to play guitar, and I thought, well, this poor fellow will never play guitar. And right now, he's a far superior guitar player than I would ever dream of being. And then he started riding bikes about the time I was slowing down with bikes. So I'm going to figure that he'll show up in Kansas and be far more fit than I am, and that'll be fun motivation too. But we're going to have a little bit of a family connection there, and
Awesome.
So another level of fun in that part too.
And you're hitting on my point too, which I appreciate, but I beat to death the mindset thing that you're going after this in the right way. That's lifestyle. The main reason I told you I wanted on the show was that you're proving what I've preached for years. It doesn't matter where you are, you can get started on something like this, and you can take on something as monstrous as what you're going after. It's all in fitness, nutrition, and then lifestyle and mindset. And you're dealing with two things there. You've got the mindset conquered, and you're looking at this. This is the lifestyle I want. This is involving my family. This is making connections and what have you. I think that's tremendous. That's why I appreciate having you on the show, and I appreciate the challenge you're going, and why we're looking forward to following you, pal.
Good. Well, thank you. I appreciate the support. I think we all have more advantages, and we're further along than we think.
Seriously agree with you there. So listen, everybody, catch up with him we're going to have all the information. You're looking at it right now. If you're on social media, we've got it there, got it on the podcast, but slowguyonthefastride.com. My buddy Mark still tackling, going from, down and out in the, possibly. I'll say zero to AIDA here is what we're going for, which I think is awesome. I applaud your efforts, and Mark, I really appreciate you being on the show.
Thanks, Garrett. I had a ball, man.
Well, y'all stay tuned, because we're going to follow Mark as he tackles this and talk to him about some of the challenges he's going to have as he goes along with it. I want you to follow along, especially if you're considering getting into something like this yourself, or getting back in shape. Let me show you what somebody's having the right mindset, tackling with it with the right approach, and not believing that ridiculous concept that deterioration comes automatically because time passes on the calendar, because it's just not true. If you have any questions about this, you want any questions about Mark, or how to get in touch with him or follow him, or any questions for the show about dispelling the myths of health, fitness, and wellness, reach out to me at area code 251-278-3343. That's 251-278-EDGE. Again, my email address, Garrett, Garrett, at personaledgefitness.com. That's our website and Facebook page. And if you so inclined, hit me up on Twitter at Team PE. Mark, still living the live age dream, man. This story is just one more way we help you reach your level of wellness. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for listening to the Personal Edge Fitness Podcast with Garrett Williamson. Subscribe now and be a part of the show by calling 251-278-EDGE, or message us on Facebook and Instagram at Personal Edge Fitness, or at Team PE on Twitter, and visit us at personaledgefitness.com.